Hello there, I'm Manila Chan. You're watching In Question, broadcasting live from RT America National Headquarters in Washington, D.C. Yet another shocking ruling out of Florida and the Jeffrey Epstein case that's still going on. Why is a judge barring any rewards to Epstein's accusers? All right, the Jeffrey Epstein drama continues in Florida even after his death as multiple victims seek restitution following his 2007 prosecution, citing that the state failed to notify them of any agreement that was entered. This is in reference to the so-called sweetheart deal that Epstein received, where he was essentially on house arrest and afforded this work release from his mansion. Meantime, there's a new report that says U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin was linked to Epstein's circle. The Daily Beast is reporting that Mnuchin's name appeared on legal documents for a company co-owned by an associate of Epstein. So for more on these legal issues here, let's talk to attorney Rory Riley-Topping. Rory, good to see you. So what do you make of Monday's ruling from the U.S. District Judge Kenneth Mara that said the victims aren't owed any money, no restitution, even though the government failed to tell them about this non-prosecution deal that they made with Epstein?
Well, we see this sometimes in cases, particularly like this one, where the judge said plainly in his opinion he had to apply the law because that's what his job as a judge is, even though he perhaps didn't agree with it. So in criminal law, they have what they call the rule of abatement, which basically means when the defendant dies that they abate all of the proceedings. And so that was raised, it was applicable here, and so he had to apply the law. I think the bigger conversation that we need to have, he had referenced at the end of his opinion that the victims should take solace in the fact that however small their ability to stay on top of this case and continue to work, even though they're not getting the restitution that they sought here, that it's had the potential to keep the focus on this case, change the law, and that's really what this comes down to a lot of times. If you don't like what the law says, if it results in an unjust result, like people are arguing here, then you can work to change what the law says.
Well, there's that, but what about the trust that he set up, 48 hours or so before his death? Would that essentially keep the money away from any of these victims trying to go after any restitution that way?
Well, we've talked about this previously, particularly in the context of the cases that were filed in New York. The victims are not barred from filing a civil case for damages against his estate, and they'll look at all of his assets when they do that, including the money that he's put in trust. So typically there's a look-back provision. If he did this within 48 hours of his death, obviously that raises some red flags. That's something that will be looked at as they go forward in looking at these civil cases. So the victims will very possibly get some sort of restitution. It won't be as a result of this, sweet plea deal that he negotiated back in 2007. That's unfortunate, but they're not completely without remedy, and I think that's important to remember too.
And now the Daily Beast is reporting that another big name, Steve Mnuchin, is appearing on a bunch of documents for some so-called modeling company co-owned by an Epstein associate. Do you think this is any surprise? Do you think we're going to see more big names that are tied to the government like this?
Well, I think that there's nothing that surprises me, unfortunately, when it comes to this case. It's the phrase from Through the Looking Glass. It just keeps getting curiouser and curiouser. We keep seeing big names. We keep seeing more and more of them. We've seen them in academic circles. We've seen them in government circles. We've seen them in political circles. So the fact that Mnuchin is named, I'm not entirely surprised. I don't think that bodes well for him. You have a modeling company with somebody who's known for trafficking underage women. That's certainly suspicious. So it will be interesting to see what more we learn about Mnuchin's involvement.
And what about Epstein's so-called madam, ex-girlfriend, associate, whatever you want to call her, Ghislaine Maxwell? She's still, I don't know, God knows where, wandering about, a free woman. I don't know if she's hanging out at In-N-Out Burger or, on some island somewhere. Do you find it odd that she hasn't been brought into custody even for questioning? She's not talking to anybody. She's nowhere to be found. Is that normal?
That's not normal, and I agree with you that that's a little suspicious, because obviously she's got a wealth of information that probably nobody else has in the wake of Epstein's death. And one of the things that these indictments talk about regularly are co-conspirators, both in Miami and in New York. They reference the possibility of conspiracy, and she was his chief co-conspirator. So the fact that either she hasn't been able to be tracked down, or, you know, with Epstein's 2007 deal, as we talked about, there was certainly some uncouth backdoor dealings, and I am very hesitant to accuse anybody of anything, but I would not be surprised if perhaps some of those powerful connections are at play, and that's why we haven't heard from her. It's really disappointing.
Well, ordinarily, if she was a, quote, normal person like the rest of us, she has all these women who were at the time young girls that have pointed the finger directly at her. They have named her specifically and said that she groomed them to be essentially molested and raped by Epstein. But if she were a normal person, would she have been brought in at this point?
I think it's fair to say yes, she probably would have. Somebody who is a quote-unquote normal person probably does not have billions of dollars and lots of high-powered connections to either be in hiding or strike deals behind the scenes. That's not a luxury that the average normal person has. So yes, absolutely, Marilla. I think that comes into play here.
It's just more sad news over and over for the victims here, all these women that are, you know, speaking out against it. And it speaks to the greater the greater cause here of women coming out, speaking out, and then, you know, seeing no end to their drama. Very sad.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your legal expertise with us, as always, Rory Riley-Topping.
Thank you.